Bottom line in business. Voice America Business.
Welcome to CIO Talk Radio with your host, Sanjog Gall. All comments, views, and opinions expressed on this show are strictly those of the host, guests, and callers. Here's Sanjog Gall.
Good morning and welcome to CIO Talk Radio. To learn more about the show, please visit www.ciotalkradio.com. This show is brought to you by Promethean, the global leader in managed EDI services. Today's topic is a CIO as a second banana. Our guests for today's show are Sean Banerjee, who's who's with CIO practice at Russell Reynolds Associates. Good morning, Sean.
Good morning, Sanjog.
How are you, sir?
Very well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Great. Now we have Robert Blair. He's the Senior Vice President for Enterprise Delivery Services with SunTrust Banks. Hi, Robert. Good morning. Things are going great?
Absolutely wonderful today.
Beautiful. Now, we have also Mark Polanski, who's the Managing Director with North America Information Technology Officers, Korn Ferry International. Good morning, Mark.
Good morning.
How's it going? How's the summer shaping up? Oh, actually, you know what? Summer's gone. Now it's already fall. So how's it going?
Since I'm a Yankee fan, probably pretty bad.
All right, great. So this topic, while, on the surface, it looks like something that we are, we are dealing with this topic, and the second banana may look like a derogatory title. What we are facing with is situations where individuals who are trying to go out there and looking at the next move in their career, and then they look at possibilities, whether they make another lateral move as a CIO or they could go into a second or third in command type of position in another organization. So if they actually do that, what is the basic strategy? I mean, while these are two obvious things that we see, but what could be some of those not as obvious reasons why somebody would make that role? And if they're doing it, what is their ultimate goal? They're trying to just get another CIO role after they have had some stint at a larger company and become a CIO at a larger company? Sean?
This is a very individual and very situational set of circumstances. And as we discuss both with clients, those organizations that are seeking to hire business information officer talent, as well as with candidates for either the CIO role or a role within the cadre of the CIO, much of this depends upon how technology is viewed within an organization, philosophically, as well as in a very practical, tactical fashion, reporting structures, business value creation, and cumulatively this has to be taken into consideration when making a decision around moving from, say, an enterprise CIO of a smaller entity into a number 2 or 3 role, or perhaps even a divisional role of a larger enterprise. So there are a host of contributing factors that need to be taken into consideration, both business as well as, frankly, personal in regard to one's motivation and ambition.
Mark, what do you think?
For the most part, I agree with Sean. There's a multitude of reasons for CIO at a smaller organization to consider direct report positions to a large corporate, a large enterprise CIO, be it on staff or online or in a division or a business unit or a geography. And it's impossible to generalize other than to say that there are a number of primary motivators for doing that. One is a question of size and scale. In the larger enterprise, this individual would get exposure to much larger budgets, much larger projects, deal with funding and return on investment in a much grander way. Leadership skills, the ability to manage a larger cadre of individuals than he or she had reporting to him or her in the small environment. A broader exposure in a bigger enterprise, both internally and externally, to business people that they collaborate with, and to the outside to the customer and other constituencies. And then there's the skills acquisition piece, which is a small shop CIO going to a large environment to run a piece of information technology where their background is weak, whether it be information security or infrastructure or applications, whatever will complement what the skill set they've already acquired. And then there's the issue of political skills, again, to complement what they've already acquired. Not that the politics is better or worse, large or small, but it is significantly different. And last but not least, of course, is using that position, that number 2 or number 3 direct report position to a larger enterprise CIO as a stepping stone to succession. And usually that's what the client has in mind.
Robert, what do you think?
I agree with both of the gentlemen. I think that, Mark, when you brought up about the different ways you measure, the way you think about the opportunity, the larger budgets, and maybe you are a number 2 or number 3, but at the end of the day, it's more complex, and the intricacies of the political nature as well as the influence skills necessary to work in a larger company are much more complex than a smaller company. That's certainly been my experience.
Yeah, I would certainly agree, and that's part of what I meant by political skills. But you're absolutely right. Scale changes everything.
No, what was as part of the question again, there must have been an ultimate master plan that this individual must have had for them to take this as a means to an end, this move. What could that be? Anyone?
I would say that there's 2 fundamental ways to get from a small to medium-sized company CIO role to a large, say, Fortune 500 corporate global CIO role. Let's eliminate the third, which is a direct recruit from the small shop CIO to a very large shop CIO. It's a nice kind of dream, but I think Sean would agree. We rarely.
Mark, we are losing you.
Yeah.
Can you speak a little louder?
Is that better?
Yeah.
We rarely get that opportunity to place that small shop CIO directly into a large Fortune 500 CIO role. So that leaves the 2 paths I was mentioning, and one is to move across from the top position in a smaller environment to one of these roles in a larger environment, and then look for promotion from within. Or the second path could be taking a CIO role in a mid-sized company, and so moving up the food chain by size of companies. The latter approach, the latter path, I've seen it work, but it entails more job changing and a bit more risk. So the idea of going across and then up is probably what we would recommend in that situation.
The competition, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Robert.
The competition, I would say, is so stiff for the CIO roles that the expertise needed, companies can afford to look at the cream of the crop that have a level of domain expertise in their business. And so one of the advantages of moving into a bigger company is that you're able to broaden, as a candidate, you're able to broaden your capability from a business alignment perspective. You now understand the business better than what was focused in that smaller company. And therefore, I believe that would afford you those opportunities to move up either within that company or then to be pulled into another company where that new, even though it's a number 2 or number 3, but then you could take that role to become a number 1 of a company more focused on that.
So would you think that while, other than death and taxes, nothing is certain, and they are definitely taking a risk and taking a plunge that, okay, let me, garner all the skills that I'm supposed to, and hopefully that will lead me to a level eventually, whether it's a CIO or pretty higher up position in a company. While there's a risk, but then there's no certainty do you think some of the people out there may also be looking at this very obvious transition plan from one to another, and finally you can reach a CIO role, but they may not be able to muster courage that they will be able to do this? Is that why some people may be well thinking but not are able to take that plunge like you did, Robert?
It could be. It really depends on your own personal motivation. Sean mentioned that earlier, but around what do you want out of your career? What are you trying to accomplish? What satisfies you from that perspective? And so, to me, that's what would drive you to make and take the risk, to make the move. And it's also very opportunistic, right, depending upon what avails itself to you. And so I think you have to take the journey of a career into consideration when you're thinking about that.
I would agree.
I'd absolutely agree with Robert's comment in that there is, there are a set of variables. Again, some intrinsic to kind of who you are, and others just the nature of the roles. We've seen any number of, for example, very successful top IT leaders, especially ones, for example, who are in situations where they are the CIO or equivalent for a non-U.S. company, but they're responsible for supporting the U.S. operations of those companies. Many of those executives have fundamentally the responsibilities of a corporate or enterprise CIO, but for the specific geography in the Americas. We found that many of those individuals hit a tipping point in their career where, although they've had many of the same responsibilities and expectations, fundamentally they have not been the top banana, using that analogy, and become over time sometimes frustrated, and then in order to see their career continue to progress, are in precisely this sort of dilemma where they're in a good position, they have a certain amount of latitude and freedom to act, but they are not in the top job, and sometimes that frustration can be justified because key decisions are being made, on the other side of the world, and they don't feel like they're genuinely contributing to that process, and then they have to decide what they're going to do. Many of those folks, their first option is, well, I'll try to become the CIO of I'll be the enterprise CIO of a different company, be it larger, same size, some cases even smaller. What we've seen is many of those folks end up going into divisional CIO roles of larger organizations, and in fewer cases actually move into a number two role where they're responsible for a much larger set of assets, albeit a functional one. So you've been the CIO of the Americas for Acme. You can't go any further in that organization. For whatever reason, you're not able to secure the CIO role, the enterprise CIO role of a larger company, but you go to a larger company where you're responsible for running all of their global infrastructure. So that rounds out your perhaps your infrastructure and operations experience, but it also gives you this great credential of managing a large, complex aspect of the business.
Let's take a quick break, listeners. We'll be right back after these messages and talk about the cultural fit that an IT executive who is planning to make this move into a second or third level command position, what is that due diligence that they should be doing in terms of finding out what the cultural fit is, and if this was a lateral move towards another CI role, would the due diligence would be any different? Please stay tuned. We'll be right back.
All we talk about is money. Call us toll free, 866-472-5790, and talk to the experts. We talk money all the time. Voice America Business.
Looking for flexible ways to scale your IT efforts? Then visit www.avol.com today. Avol helps companies find the global IT talent they need to align their IT and business objectives. Whether it's hiring top IT leadership talent or building a reliable technology team, Avol delivers. To find out how Avol can help your company, visit www.avol.com or call 1-800-947-2832. Avol, delivering global IT talent. That's www.avol.com. Visit today.
morning, Mr. Phelps. The company I'm going to tell you about is the global leader in managed EDI services. Your mission, should you decide to accept it, is to find out all you can about Promethean software services. The word within the intelligence community is that many of our competitors have chosen Promethean's managed EDI services. I would suggest you start your investigation by clicking on the Promethean link within the CIO Talk Radio website. This tape, Mr. Phelps, will self-destruct in 5 seconds, along with your job, if you don't provide a compelling reason as to why we haven't implemented Promethean's managed EDI solution.
Please sign on to www.prometheanssi.com or call us directly at 866-311-0580.
The Internet's only all-business and financial radio network, Voice America Business.
You are listening to CIO Talk Radio. To learn more about the show, please visit www.ciotalkradio.com. If you have a question or comment, call toll-free 1-866-472-5790. Now back to the show. Here's Sanjog Gal.
Welcome back. So we were discussing cultural fit. If suppose an individual, an IT executive who wants to go to a new company and he or she wants to join as a second and third in command, they would look for some sort of a cultural fit. And then if at all that was a lateral move, how would that due diligence be any different? So Mark, take that, please.
Well, I would say that the change that we've described from a small company CIO role to a larger company, second or third level position, the due diligence around culture is probably the same as the due diligence in culture that any career move would require. The fact that the move that we're describing is going from small to large, I think adds simply another dimension of decision-making for the candidate. So looking at the first part, the culture change and the due diligence around culture change is certainly addressed through multiple interviews, through speaking to the company's employees, ex-employees, networking to suppliers and collaborators and folks who know the company from the inside pretty well, and trying to make a judgment, hey, do I fit, is this me? The other one is a little trickier. That is, do I think I'm a big company person or a small company person? In fact, that could be a driver in making that change if one is uncomfortable in a small environment where everybody knows your business and getting into a more disciplined, possibly even more bureaucratic, larger environment. For certain people, that's the right place to be. And the best way to find that out is to speak to people who have done both and find out what the contrasts are. I don't think either one is better or worse, only which one is better for the individual candidate.
Robert?
Yeah, I agree with Mark's points. What I would also say that there's, as part of my assessment when I've made this move, my sense was that, and I even asked specific questions around the type of candidate my company wanted, because I believe that a CIO in, say, a mid-sized company has certain attributes and certain leadership qualities and certain styles, and their ability to drive to results, the ability to align with the business and really understand that particular segment and understand how to drive an entire organization. If the larger company is looking for someone to fill a box and just to kind of plod along, which very large companies have that reputation. But as large companies are transforming themselves, they want, what I found is that they want these leaders that know how to drive and drive towards success. because the business units within the larger company have no less expectations for revenue, no less customer expectations on quality and other aspects of running a good business unit. And so I think understanding if the larger company really wants someone like that or just wants someone to fall in line and follow the party line, I think that's a big difference and has to be part of the diligence you do is looking at these type of roles.
Sure.
I would absolutely concur with both of those points of view. I think that cultural fit in certain respects is, if not one of perhaps the most critical factor in a successful hire, and then that person actually delivering and executing and being successful in the role itself. I think we find more situations where the fit doesn't work because of culture more than any egregious error in judgment or inability to deliver. Although it certainly does happen in many cases, perhaps. But Robert's point around driving change and how an individual can affect that type of change, much of that is based around the culture of the organization. Is it more of a steady Eddie, or is it more of someone who takes the proverbial bull by the horns and really drives things? The ability for CIOs and business information officers at large to really be able to influence individuals within the organization is becoming increasingly important, and that goes right to the core of cultural fit, because there are very different ways that you can influence people, and if your DNA and the DNA of the organization to some extent are not aligned or in tune, that can make that exceedingly challenging.
And so, Sean, if I could just to jump in there again, I think that the reality of the cultural assessment comes when you're on the job and the hiring executives say, we want a change agent, we want someone that can come in and make this happen. And then so their desire, how is that really matched against the culture of the company and the ability to affect change in a very large company? And so that's the risk you take. Even if you do the diligence and everyone says, yes, we're changing, we're doing this, we want these kind of leaders, the question is that a reality once you get there?
Is the appetite there? Absolutely, which is one reason what we try to do, and it's important because in the executive search industry, I suppose everyone's buying and selling a little bit and kind of working forward in good faith towards a common goal. But when you can incorporate other factors into your diligence, for example, talking to alumni, beyond just the candid conversation during the course of the interview with the company, but being able to perhaps turn to people, consultants, other recruiters who may have worked with the organization and alumni of the organization in order to understand that once you're on the job, what's the reality? I think that goes right to your point because you're absolutely right. There's typically this kind of honeymoon period and everyone is buying and selling a little bit, and it's hard to judge, how genuine that desire is.
Now, to be realistic, how much of a due diligence can be done sitting outside? Because eventually, even like Mark and Sean, you really try to help by finding out what's going on, and of course, you've worked with the company and really try to get them a glimpse of what it would be like if you were to join. But the reality strikes when you actually go in there and you spend a month or two, but then you're already in there. So is there a better way of finding out, or you just have to take a leap of faith here?
I think you do as much research as you can. As both Sean and I suggested, not only interviewing and speaking to current employees, but looking for former employees and those who have worked with the company in a service-oriented relationship or a customer-oriented relationship. And then at the end of the day, there's never a sure thing, and every once in a while a cultural mismatch does occur. Another avenue for determining cultural fit that's more driven by the client side is the use of profiling and assessment tools. Profiling sounds like a bad word, but things like the Myers-Briggs test and others like it to reveal a decision-making style or a leadership style or a thinking style And the major search firms, certainly Korn Ferry has been a leader at that in that area, has created online assessment tools that we use as part of the search process, so that if we have that glimpse into the candidate's background, thinking, leadership style, how they react under pressure, that sort of thing, we can use that information during the personal interview to better uncover strengths and weaknesses. We can use it in the reference checking phase, and certainly there's no perfect candidate. So if we know where the soft spots are, we can discuss with the client what an onboarding program and a continued professional development program, and possibly some coaching early on can do to help the candidate fit in even better and get past some of the weaknesses that we've observed. Usually they're not tragic weaknesses. They're simply some lightness or strength where it should be.
All right, Sean, what do you think?
I agree with Mark, and certainly there are many tools that an organization and even an individual can avail themselves of, because at this level, frankly, it's not as much, well, it's equal parts, quote, winning the role, but there is also the importance of making sure it's the right role. And frankly, one can see their career progression retarded by making a poor decision based on blind ambition or desire for that top spot, and then they go into something, and frankly, it's either suboptimal or they are not the right fit for it culturally or otherwise. It doesn't work out, and then that puts them in a much more difficult situation in terms of career management going forward. One of the points that Mark made, and he mentioned in addition to tools and other kind of competency-based resources that are out there, it is referencing, and I think that referencing is something that is one of the most critical but probably most lightly utilized resources that an organization or individual can avail themselves. And it's about honest referencing. It's about demonstrating a level of maturity and EQ in respect to providing people who really can provide a holistic 360 view on you, your strengths, your weaknesses, areas for development. And my experience has been that many individuals are hesitant to do that because they believe that someone who may be critical would actually be doing them an injustice, which is not necessarily the case. It's again, providing references that are honest and have the maturity and thoughtfulness to provide you with an objective reference and say, look, this wasn't so great, and this is what perhaps he or she could have done different, but this is how they responded and reacted to that. That's providing the transparency that's important. And for organizations that are hiring these sorts of executives, or any executive for that matter, to avail oneself of referencing is incredibly important. We have found that in many cases when references are provided, organizations simply don't do them. And secondly, sometimes are inclined to take references simply from the client without going out and doing their own third-party diligence.
Let's take a quick break, listeners. We'll be right back after these messages and talk about the close relationship with the management is what usually helps a CIO become more effective, because they're empowered. They can really be having their ears to the ground with respect to business and get things done. When you are used to such affinity and closeness to the top management to get things done that way, you may take that for granted, but when you go to the second and third in command position, that distance would increase. But would that jeopardize your effectiveness, and would that jeopardize the way you used to prove to the world that yes, you exist and you are indispensable? And how do you get over that hump? So please stay tuned. We'll be right back and discuss.
Money. Up-to-date business and financial news. Money. Call now and get the financial information you need. 866-472-5790. 866-472-5790. Voice America Business.
Looking for flexible ways to scale your IT efforts? Then visit www.avol.com today. Avol helps companies find the global IT talent they need to align their IT and business objectives. Whether it's hiring top IT leadership talent or building a reliable technology team, Avol delivers. To find out how Avol can help your company, visit www.avol.com or call 1-800-947-2832. Avol, delivering global IT talent. That's www.avol, A-V-V-A-L, avol.com. Visit today.
Everyone faces conflict. At home, at work, in the community, in the world. This show is about how to fix those conflicts with practical tips and techniques. Doug Knoll brings to the Internet airwaves the first of its kind, a show that teaches peaceful resolution to life's daily battles. That's Fix Your Conflicts, broadcasting live every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Pacific on the Voice America Business Channel.
The bottom line in business. Voice America Business.
You are listening to CIO Talk Radio. To learn more about the show, please visit www.ciotalkradio.com. If you have a question or comment, call toll-free 1-866-472-5790. Now back to the show. Here's Sanjog Gall.
Welcome back. So we are looking at CIO being close to the management, that is top management, and having that relationship and leveraging that relationship gives them the necessary empowerment and the authority and, the very oomph that they are able to get things done. Now, with that changing into someone who is actually now reporting to the CIO, the first or the third, then third or the second or the third in command, which in turn kind of increases the distance. And suddenly they are looking up to CIO to get them that go ahead, etc. How can an individual again prove to the world that the person can actually deliver now that the distance has increased, or does that distance matter, Robert?
Well, I'd say you can't let it matter. You've really got to utilize your influence skills, not only with the business when you're a number 2, number 3, but also with the CIO. And so you're measured on the results, regardless of what role you're in. And so, very, very candidly, I would say you can't let that matter.
But that's not. Is that not obvious that it is the case, though? That you cannot just go up to a top management individual and say, I want to get it done this way. There must be a protocol that individual has to follow, isn't it?
Oh, there certainly is, but I think you have to be respectful of that, but as part of your preparation and thought leadership around what are the ultimate results and understanding it more broadly, you lose the ability just to say, do it, right, make it happen. Well, you have to be more, more savvy in your influence across the board, and to me, that becomes the key learning, the key skill that then will make you an effective number 1.
Okay, so you basically work towards creating a leverage of some sort so that you get the job done.
That's correct.
Yeah, I agree with Robert, and I think that goes back to kind of the earlier comments around influencing and how critical that is now. Also, if that is such a genuine concern at the outset, there are two things that perhaps could be considered. One is fundamentally, is it the right organization and the right role? Is it set up to be successful? And if one feels that it's not, then you should pass. Secondly, though, there are certain reporting mechanisms that can be put into place to still allow that individual to have that reporting connection even. So I'll share a specific example of a gentleman who Mark and I have worked with and know quite well. He's a well-regarded CIO, a gentleman named Dana Deasy, who's now the global CIO for British Petroleum. Dana had been the CIO of Tyco. He then, and he'd spent some time earlier in his career at General Motors, but after being the enterprise CIO of Tyco, he went to General Motors where he was the CIO of North America, which was their largest business. In that role, he reported to Ralph Shigenda, who is the corporate or enterprise CIO of GM, but he also had a direct reporting line to Rick Wagner, the CEO of all of GM. so in that sense, albeit he was a geographic CIO or line divisional CIO, depending upon the language one would like to apply, he still had a direct reporting structure into the top leadership, and certainly that allowed him to be very effective in the role. And then he was subsequently recruited to BP into the top role. So I share it that, even at the highest levels, these things certainly can work if properly orchestrated.
Mark?
Yeah, all the things that both Robert and Sean have said are certainly true. I'd like to add a restatement or just a slightly different perspective on that connecting with the business aspect of this executive's role in today's business environment. Collaboration, building consensus, being consultative, getting the business side to buy in, and in fact, in most large system projects, the business side actually sponsoring an enterprise level systems implementation. So we've all know that the relationship is so important. But adding to that, if the executive's purpose in coming into that number 2 or number 3 position was to position himself or herself for a large-scale enterprise, let's say Fortune 500 CIO role, there's also an issue of branding, and that is, what is this person known for? What is this person known as? So someone coming from a small to medium shop and taking a number 2 or number 3 role behind a Randy Mott, or in this situation Sean described, behind a Ralph Shagenda, brands that person as identified by those superstar CIOs as potential successors, as really good people, as still up and coming, and it's going to get reported in CIO magazine, and it's going to get picked up by the blogs and that sort of thing. So there's an issue of visibility in the industry. There's an issue of visibility within the new company, and in many cases that comes down to what the media people call personal branding. And I think personal branding really does have a place for that aggressive, ambitious IT professional seeking a top CIO role.
Now, what about unlearning? Now, this is something which is, even with a game of golf, you may play and start playing and, form some bad habits, and when you go to a pro, what they say is, before I help you learn, you got to unlearn some of the bad habits. And it's not a bad habit here. We're talking about you working as a CIO in a company, and then you're moving to a different organization. The title is not the same. Maybe the leverage that you may have with that, which is going to come with the second and third in command, may be a little different, and the philosophies and mindset and the culture in the organization is a little different. So don't you have to actually unlearn certain things before you take on something new? Robert, what do you think? What did you have to do?
Actually, I'm not sure that you do have to unlearn. I think that that as you're looking for the connection between the company and the candidate, they obviously know you're number one. When I took this existing role, we took that into consideration, both parties, and we talked about it openly. But I think that it goes back to the comments we made earlier around that was the desire, kind of the attributes and successes and learnings that I had in previous roles were exactly what they wanted in the space that I'm in now. And so I think that unlearning it would be a disservice to the partnership that we created.
I would totally agree. I don't think one needs to throw away or unlearn or discard skills acquired previously. I think the trick is to complement that first skill set with the additional skills that we mentioned a couple of breaks ago around scale and scope and exposure by a large enterprise versus a small enterprise. And so a fellow like Robert can function well in both large and small environment and can take what he's learned in the smaller environment and apply it, massage it, expand it, and modify it and apply it to the large environment. and then there are unique skills in the large environment which he will add to his total bag of skills.
And I believe that's back to our comments earlier about influence. And so the need to influence in the larger companies to create that success. And I think small, mid-sized company CIOs, they can tend to just say, "This is it. I'm the boss. We're going to do it." And that doesn't work in big companies. And so, ensuring that, to have the executive acumen to lead and to lead towards the deliverables and the successes you need to have are part of that honing of skill. And then, if you can function in both environments, I think that makes you a broader candidate to lots of opportunities.
Especially if the large enterprise you've gone to is made up of multiple smaller business units.
That's correct.
Now you have the perspective of the internal customer or the internal business partner, and you have the perspective of enterprise general management, and in both cases you have the opposite view and understanding of the customer. Robert, I wanted to pick up just briefly on something else you said about that small to medium-sized company CIO who says, "That's it, I'm the boss," and that sort of thing. And we've all talked about the change from large to small at the number 2 or number 3 level as something that's an individual decision that might be right for Robert, might not be right for Sally, that sort of thing. So it's a personal choice. But I find that a lot of people who don't understand or understand but don't appreciate for themselves what that kind of a move can do career-wise, usually if you peel back the onion, you'll find that they enjoy the status, they enjoy the control, they enjoy the leadership attributes of the smaller company, where they can put their arms around the whole thing and own it all. And for the right person, I think that's a very good reason to stay in the smaller environment.
Sean, did you have any comments around this?
I think that both what Robert and Mark have shared is absolutely spot on. And again, a lot of this goes back to it's a bit esoteric, but it goes back to, in addition to organizational structure and design and specific requirements around the role, the individual and their ability to either embrace or reconcile this sort of dynamic and psychologically prepare themselves for that type of role.
Now, are there any specific adjustments that are going to happen and we should be mentally prepared for, Mark, when you're going to take this role?
Well, that's a good one. Something that both Sean and I referred to before around assessment and due diligence, that sort of thing. I think that the hidden key is to know oneself and be sure that what you want is the right thing, or as the old cliche says, be careful what you wish for, you may get it. And clearly, big is not right for everybody, and small is equally not right for everybody. So knowing oneself and knowing what gets you excited in the morning and what you like or dislike about your job in a smaller environment versus a larger environment, etc., is very important. And at the end of the day, do the due diligence, but you may not find out until you're there. So I'm suggesting that if a candidate were on the fence, big, small, go give it a try. I think our Sean and our competitors, executive recruiters in the IT space, are respectful, and most clients are as well, respectful of one change that was tried and was unsuccessful. If the candidate has bounced back and recovered nicely, so there's one year stint on the resume. If this person is reasonably stable, that's not going to be a deal killer, I don't think. So just know oneself, and if you can, do as much due diligence as possible.
Let's take a quick break, listeners. We'll be right back after these messages, and then listen to Robert and Sean about what do they think about the possible adjustments that an individual may have to make if they are going to accept a second or third in command role in IT. Please stay tuned.
Stocks, bonds, 401ks, investments, refinancing. We can help you. Call now toll free, 866-472-5790, 866-472-5790. Voice America Business.
Looking for flexible ways to scale your IT efforts? Then visit www.avol.com today. Avol helps companies find the global IT talent they need to align their IT and business objectives. Whether it's hiring top IT leadership talent or building a reliable technology team, Avol delivers. To find out how Avol can help your company, visit www.avol.com or call 1-800-947-2832. Avol, delivering global IT talent. That's www.avol, A-V-V-A-L, avol.com. Visit today.
Are you still doing EDI in-house? Then put your effort into your business and contact Promethean, the industry's most trusted provider of managed EDI services. Promethean has been providing cost savings and reliable service to Fortune 1000 clients for over 15 years. Our solution is platform independent and enables our clients to reach higher levels of performance. Join Promethean and say goodbye to old technology. For more information, please sign on to www.prometheanssi.com or call us directly at 866-311-0580.
The Internet's only all business and financial radio network, Voice America Business.
You are listening to CIO Talk Radio. To learn more about the show, please visit www.ciotalkradio.com. If you have a question or comment, call toll-free 1-866-472-5790. Now back to the show. Here's Sanjog Gall.
Welcome back. So this is regarding the adjustments, possible adjustments that an aspiring second and third in command kind of an IT before you try to get that kind of role, and you've been a CIO before, what adjustment that you should be mentally prepared for. In fact, during the break, we were also talking about in that same sequence, if someone is trying to see what adjustment will they have to make and is this worthwhile, etc. So then how someone can help them make the right choice, whether they should jump into this or not, and who can possibly help. So Robert, why don't you take this question first?
I think what's key from an adjustment perspective is that you're not the boss, you're not number one, and therefore there are other peer-level individuals with their accountabilities and their area of responsibilities, and you have to be sure to be respectful of those boundaries. There's no reason, as you know, if you consider yourself more well-rounded and have skills in another area, why you can't partner up and lend your insights. But you need to be clear that's not your job. And so I think you have to be very careful coming in that you don't step on toes and try to be the CIO. And so you have to be very mentally prepared for, as I like to put it, you're not the boss. You are part of the management team, and I think that team concept is something that the successful people that can make a move like that, that's something that's important to them. And I would say that same attribute would make them a good number one too, because it's about the team at the top executive level as well and how they perform and interoperate. And so, to me, the dynamic is more about the understanding those boundaries, but it's the same as it would be if you were the number one and needed to have the boundaries with the business partners.
Sean?
I would echo that and just add that one needs to have a very high level of EQ, ideally in addition to their IQ, and be able to exercise a great clarity of purpose. This is about roles and goals, and it's understanding one's role, the roles of individuals around them, superiors, peers, subordinates, and what the goals are, theirs and that of the team and the broader enterprise, and being able to really focus and again, execute against those goals.
Now, one of the situations I remember, I was talking to someone who was in a similar situation where they actually took the plunge. And when they went in and they said, okay, what's your typical day? So they said that I'm talking to a lot of people, and I'm trying to make sure that I'm not making any comment one way or the other to be seen as judgmental or have got a stand per se in a given situation. I'm just trying to listen for these next 2-3 months, and I'm not trying to rub anybody the wrong way, because you never know who is having influence at the right place. So that is a super cautious kind of approach when you enter an organization which may be much larger and you are not the top dog. And is that the approach that a person who tries to make themselves visible is supposed to take?
But that's a good approach regardless, right? Being a good listener, and when you join an organization, make sure you're learning and understanding the dynamics, and that you're new, but you don't have all the answers. But I think that's a good approach regardless.
I would agree. The most important thing is to listen and absorb the politics, absorb the players, find out who the good guys are, the bad guys are. Find yourself an internal docent or even a mentor in the new company who can tell you where the pitfalls may be, and the listening and absorbing is just so important. And Robert hit it right on the head to prepare for success. And again, once you know which direction to go in and where the priorities are, and now you've got to depend on your internal network that you should be building. Yes, your brand, to use that word again, to quote unquote sell your ideas and get the business engaged, and obviously to go find the funding, usually from the board. So the relationship building, probably number one on my list.
But don't you think that if a person is too complacent, they may become invisible, which is not your goal?
No, I'm not looking for complacent. I'm looking for someone who is listening thoughtfully, can contribute from a proven knowledge base, but is expanding that knowledge base in the new environment.
Now, with respect to politics, that's an interesting area, because that may exist at any given level in the organization. So whether you were a CIO, you at least were almost at the top, and usually you would not have as much politics going on. And that may be my statement, when you are more than welcome to challenge it at the top executive level. But then when you are at the CIO cabinet level or the mid-management, a lot of that starts happening. So if you are going to leave that CIO position where you were having maybe some politics but not to that degree, and now you come to a second and third in command type of role, and you are going to deal with that a lot more. How are you supposed to make sure that while you're trying to make yourself visible, create the value within the organization, is that going to be taking a lot of your time, or should that take a lot of your time, or you rather just focus on what you do and you expect that people will notice you?
If you don't do the former, then you're not going to be a candidate for promotion, which is ostensibly the reason you went there. So yeah, you've got to come forward as you've suggested.
But then, isn't this a game that you have to play regardless?
Yeah.
I'll jump in right there. It is. Now, the term game hopefully doesn't give a frivolous connotation to it, because it, perhaps not chutes and ladders. It may be kind of, world-class chess that we're talking about. But yes, I think that you've got a scenario where, people do have a responsibility to themselves in respect to career management, and positioning themselves and helping, looking at, their boss and those around them in order to ensure that they're positioned in order to be recognized and rewarded for their contributions. With that, obviously, comes a high degree of accountability as well, because if you expect to be recognized for the good things, well, there's a likelihood then that cuts both ways. But back to some of the earlier comments, I think that, there is, again, it's a judicious balance, I'll use that term, where you certainly need to listen and invest in relationships, but at the same time also contribute. Very few organizations these days have an extended runway for a person, certainly a senior executive who's highly visible and compensated, to come in and not take some sort of action. So, we often use the expression, pick some of the low-hanging fruit, use that to build credibility. Irrespective of one's view on creationism, you have, 2 ears and 1 mouth, and perhaps use them in that proportion. As you listen and learn, make contributions that perhaps won't be seismic, but will cumulatively over time, and then ideally sooner than later, afford you the opportunity to take on larger, more strategic opportunities and challenges, which, again, to Mark's point, are going to be the events that help you continue to build your career into that, enterprise CIO function.
On behalf of the show and our listeners, I'd really like to thank you, Sean and Robert, Mark, for sharing your thoughts about how a CIO who has once dealt with a smaller size organization and wants to move into second and third in command position is able to do so and make a presence for themselves and really grow and reach their ultimate goal of becoming a CIO of a larger organization. Thanks, you.
Thank you very much for having us.
Bye, Sandra.
Thank you so much again. Now, one may see moving to a reporting position after having been a top dog at an organization as an opportunity, and while there may be others who may not see it that much and may not take the plunge, or they may be scared to do so, they don't know what's future is going to bring in store for them. So it is quite an extended emotional decision, and a lot of things, there are a lot of moving parts here. However, once you've decided to go this route, few challenges may surface with respect to aligning work style and philosophies that you used to follow, and also align yourself with the current CIO and his or her cabinet. At the same time, there are great opportunities to work in larger and more complex settings, because that will allow you to have a better overall profile for future growth. You are contemplating such a move, are you? How are you deciding if this is a good fit or not? What do you think are the challenges that you may face? Please send us your thoughts to views@ciotalkradio.com. That is views@ciotalkradio.com. Thank you again for listening to CIO Talk Radio, brought to you by Promethean, the global leader in managed EDI services. This is Sanjog Aul, your talk show host. Till next week, take care and God bless.
Thank you for tuning in to CIO Talk Radio. To learn more about the show, please visit www.ciotalkradio.com. Join Sanjog Aul next Wednesday at 9 a.m. Central, 7 a.m. Pacific for another hour of CIO Talk Radio.